In Module 35, Myers introduces us to what I'm calling some common barriers to problem solving, obstacles to problem solving. In this short vodcast, I'm not going to talk about confirmation bias, which is also one of the barriers or obstacles that Myers talks about. Instead, I want to kind of flesh out this concept of fixation, mental set, and functional fixedness. Everything is color-coded on this slide that goes together. So the first thing I want you to think about is the relationship between these three. It's slightly confusing, but once you get a hang of it, it's not so bad at all. Basically, at the most basic, mental set and functional fixedness are examples of fixation. Everybody got that? That's why these lines connect here. They're examples of fixation. Furthermore, functional fixedness is an example of a mental set. Okay, that's why that arrow goes that way. Okay, so both mental set and functional fixedness are examples of fixation, and functional fixedness is a type of mental set. So fixation is just your general term. Imagine it being like the term, if we're doing grammar, verbs. Mental set you can think of when you're thinking of the relationship between fixation, mental set, and functional fixedness. Maybe mental set are transitive verbs and functional fixedness are linking verbs, right? They're types of verbs. That's the way to think about the connection between these three. Okay, but it's also, a lot of textbooks will just not give you this term and will just say functional fixedness is a type of mental set. Okay. Fixation is basically just our inability to see a problem from a fresh perspective. And Myers is trying to get you to realize that on a daily basis, we're making judgments and solving problems. They don't just have to be math problems. What should I have for lunch is a problem to be solved. It's a decision to be made. It's a judgment. Do I go for the hamburger with the fries or do I go for the salad, right? Those are all decisions we have to make. Okay, so what happens when we're trying to solve problems and we realize that as psychologists look at this, what are some of the things that get in the way for people to actually effectively solve problems? Well, one of them is they can't see the problem from a fresh perspective. More specifically, when they suffer from a mental set, it basically is they keep using the same problem-solving techniques that worked for them in the past to basically address new problems or slightly transformed problems. An example might be study techniques that worked for you, say, in 8th grade may no longer be as effective for you in high school courses. Subsequently, the skill sets, the study skills you use now may not be so effective for you in college or in grad school. So that has to do with your tendency to approach a problem, right? To use certain strategies. So mental set is actually something you do. It's a tendency people have. Functional fixedness is usually connected to our relationship of how we view objects to help us solve problems. And it's like literally we sometimes get stuck in thinking that a hammer only has one function. Perhaps hammers have multiple functions given the circumstances. But if we can't see that they can have multiple functions, then we're suffering from functional fixedness. So let's give you an example of functional fixedness on this side of the page. So before I got to this solution, right, let's say I have a plank of wood and there's a screw sticking out, and I want to turn the screw so it gets embedded into the wood and it's not sticking out. But I don't have a screwdriver handy. Okay. But in my pocket, if this were 1985, I would have had a New York City subway token. Now they have cards, Metro cards for this, but we used to have tokens in our pocket. And let's say I only think of the token as something that can help me get on the subway, not as something I could use as basically a screwdriver, right? Well, I'm suffering from functional fixedness. To overcome functional fixedness, I think to myself, wait a minute, I can actually use this subway token for more than just getting me on the subway. I can actually do this and use it as a screwdriver. I've overcome functional fixedness. Okay, one other example of a mental set. Let's say we have two siblings, right? Let's just say we have Jill and we have little Stevie. And let's say that Jill is tasked with babysitting her brother. And during that course of babysitting, Jill's mom says, I want you and Stevie to split up the chores. So Jill, you're in charge of giving your brother some chores to do. And Stevie basically is either not doing the chores or doing them too slow. So Jill has a problem to solve, right? She needs Stevie to do these chores or else she's going to get stuck with them. How does she approach the problem? Well, let's just say Jill's main way of approaching the problem is to yell at little Stevie. But it's not working. Stevie basically just is ignoring her and he's still not doing his chores. Well, if she persists in yelling at him, if that's her main way of trying to solve the problem that is little Stevie, then she is suffering from a mental set. To overcome the mental set, she's going to have to think, what else could I do? Perhaps there's some type of reinforcement I can use. Perhaps I can tell Stevie I'll give him some candy if he finishes his chores. That's overcoming mental set. Finally, I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but this is worth a review. You should go back to Unit 4 and look at how mental set relates to what's called perceptual set that we learned, again, in Unit 4. Both guide our perceptual set guides our perception, mental set guides how we look at a problem and how we approach problem solving. Okay? The example here of the fuzzy picture of the UFO, what I'm trying to get at with this is if I believe in UFOs and I see a fuzzy picture of a flying object, I am more ready to believe that it is in fact a UFO. If I don't believe in a UFO, I am less likely to believe this fuzzy flying object is a UFO in an ambiguous picture. So perception sets, this kind of idea, sets, these are forms of cognition that guide how we approach things and what we actually see. So there's a connection, but more to be said on that if you do a little bit of research in your book, okay?